slight delay. That was at our end, but we are all there now. Good morning. So I think we'll start. It is now 10 o'clock or just after 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 8th of June. Welcome and thank you all for attending today's virtual hearing on traffic and transport matters as part of a conjoined inquiry for 3 wind farm applications at Craiginmoddie, Carrick and Knockcronal in South Ayrshire. I see a number of familiar faces across the screen. Ms. Traynor, I thank you for being with us all week, and others have joined us on some of the days. So thank you very much for your time and your energy. But for the benefit of those who've not been involved in any of the sessions so far, my name is Rosie Leaven and I'm one of the 3 reporters appointed by Scottish Ministers to consider the 3 applications and report back to Ministers. The other 2 reporters, Mr. Bray and Mr. Reid, are with us. They can make themselves known now. And I'll be chairing today's session based on the agenda that was issued on the 25th of May. So can I check that everybody can see me and that they've got the agenda? Everybody happy? Yep, great. And the session is, as usual, being broadcast live. With the previous sessions, in taking part today, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images and sound recordings and any information in them for webcasting and training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. So I hope that you're all comfortable with that. So if I could go around the parties now and ask everybody else to introduce themselves, and I'll start with the applicants and then the council and then the other parties. So if I could start with Craiginmoddie, Mr. Hardy.
Yes, good morning then. David Hardy, partner at CMS, and the leading the charge for Craiginmoddie. On my side, I have got Mr. Alan Devenny, who is a project director with Sistra. Whether you can just make yourself available.
Yeah, good morning, everyone.
To see.
Thank you.
Oh,
yeah, we can, thanks. Could we move on to Carrick?
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Ewan MacLeod, solicitor with Shepherd and Wedderburn, representing the applicant, and my witness today is for Douglas Bissett from WSP.
I'm not seeing Mr. Bissett on the screen, but it may just be that I don't have enough people in my view.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Douglas Bissett from WSP. I'm the transport witness for the Carrick wind farm applicant.
Great, I've got you now, thank you. And Knockcronal.
Good morning, my name is Vincent Fraser, King's Counsel. I'm instructed by Pinsent Masons, and my instructing solicitor, Mr. McGovern, is on the call also. And my witness today is Mr. Gordon Buchan, who I can see is on, but I can't actually see him on the screen at the moment.
Good morning, everyone. I can see you, Mr. Fraser, very clearly. Looking at the edge.
Okay, I can see you both. That's very helpful. Thank you. And for the council?
Good morning. My name is Douglas Armstrong. I'm King's Counsel at the Scottish Bar in Terra Firma Chambers, and I'm instructed by South Ayrshire Council. South Ayrshire Council have 2 witnesses today, Kevin Braidwood, who's the head of Ayrshire Roads Alliance, and Steve Callan, planner at Stantec.
Mr. Braidwood and Mr. Callan, I can see you both. Great. And if we could move on to Save Straighten for Scotland, could the representative introduce himself?
Yes, good morning. My name is John Ross and I'm representing Save Straighten for Scotland.
Great. Good morning, Mr. Ross. Ms. Traynor? Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute, but...
Ellen Traynor, resident of Dobbingstone Farm.
Thank you. Good morning. And we also have Daily Community Council. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Helena Minhinnick, Secretary, Daily Community Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify that you are representing Daily Community Council, I know that you've made an individual representation? Are you covering both, or?
No, it's actually for the community council, just generally, and here just to see what's going on, basically.
Okay, and just to clarify, I think your interest was in Craiginmoddie and Knockcronal. I don't think you made any representations.
Yeah, Craiginmoddie and Carrick more than Knockcronal, because
But
Carrick.
am I right in saying? Sorry, am I right in saying that you didn't make representations on the Carrick proposal?
I think I did originally make an objection, and that was regarding transport through Daly.
Okay, I think I wasn't able to put my hand to any objection that you made on Carrick. I don't know whether the Carrick applicant can clarify that.
That was in the original objection. I haven't made any particular submission now, no.
Right, okay. We certainly have copies of your comments on the other two proposals, and that would be the basis of our discussion.
Right.
Great, thank you. So for everybody, the purpose of today is for us to examine those matters that have been raised in hearing statements and in earlier submissions. We're not going to go over ground that's agreed or where we don't think we need further information to prepare our report. And we're focusing on traffic and access matters. We already have written evidence on the related matter of the landscape and visual effects of the access options, and we heard some further oral evidence on that from the community on Tuesday at the evening session. So that's not the focus of today's session. But today we will be taking ourselves through the agenda. We will not have any formal presentation of cases or any cross-examination, and I'm going to start off each agenda item by directing a question at one of the parties, and then after that I'll invite the other parties to comment. So then we might have a bit of discussion, but I'll try and bring the parties in and make sure everybody has the opportunity to comment. If you do have comments or questions as the discussion progresses, please try and make sure they go through me so that I can keep things on track in terms of the agenda items and the timing. And also please be respectful, as always. Let the other party finish their point, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. I'll leave it up to each team to decide who's answering the questions for them. Please use the raise the hand function or just your hand. I'll try and keep an eye out for that if you want to speak. And please do remember to try and mute and unmute yourself when you're not talking, and I'll try and remember that myself. So I hope that you all have got the relevant documents to hand, and if you could refer to the relevant CD number and the electronic page or paragraph number if you're making references, and we will take our time to make sure everybody's got the relevant documents as we go along. So I recommend that you have the various hearing statements to hand, plus the conditions, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a second. So we do have quite a full agenda and a number of parties, so I will move on when we think that we've got everything that we need to write up our reports, and don't feel obliged to say anything if you're only repeating what you've already said in written submissions. All that you see today is evidence though, and it may need to be included in our reports, so you'll see us take notes as we go along, and again I may need to pause just to make sure I get things noted down as we go. We expect that the matters set out in the agenda can be dealt with during the course of the day, and if we progress into this afternoon, then we will pause for lunch, usually around 1 o'clock, if that suits everyone. And we'll also have a couple of short breaks during the session as and when is necessary. So you'll see from the agenda that we intend to take each proposal in turn, given that there are slightly different issues with each case, and then we'll turn to cumulative issues. And that allows us to start with Craiginmoddie, which the council had previously provided a hearing statement on the basis of an objection to that proposal. We are aware from communications on Friday, however, that the council is content to remove its objection. Sorry, could I? Mr. Callan, could I take your question if you have one?
Sorry, ma'am, it was just my link went about a minute ago, and
oh, sorry.
It's and I'm in the same room as Mr. Callum. So I sort of said, you better put up your hand and say I'm not here anymore, as it were.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
But I'm back
Did
in
you? Would you like me to repeat anything from that last? No, I think
No, it's
probably
okay.
you understand the procedural matters sufficiently. Okay, Mr. Hardy, you also have your hand up.
Yes, I'm just getting instructions that the live stream isn't working.
Okay.
So we're on here, but I've got some who are listening on that live stream and they have no service. So I
Right,
don't know whether
okay.
there's a way of
Well,
checking
let's just
that.
take a pause and I'll check that with my colleagues. Lucy, are you on the call still?
Got the IT gremlins in this morning by the sound of it.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of that. It looks like Lucy is trying to deal with the public eye issues. Just pause for a moment and hopefully we'll get confirmation that is being addressed, because I wouldn't like people not to be able to see.
It's never a good message then.
Hey, sorry to Lucy there, and she's going to have to resend the link for the live stream. So in that situation, we're just going to have to adjourn for 5 minutes to allow her to do that and resend the link, and then we can start up again. So I'm sorry about that. Slight hiccup at the system with all our webcasting and hearings over the last little while. It seems to be a slightly bigger problem than we thought. It might be something to do with the server. So what we're going to do is just proceed, and unfortunately it won't be live webcast, but we will have a recording and people will be able to see that afterwards. So rather than hanging on and waiting to try and fix it, we'll proceed if that's okay with everybody. Is that okay, Mr. Hardy?
Well, it's not what I was expecting. Obviously, it's really unfortunate. The difficulty I've got is my client, for instance, is on the live stream rather than on this session. So he can't hear what's going on, and I'm not going to be in a position to take instructions. So I'm hesitant to proceed.
Is he able to join this call?
What I was going to say was I'm hesitant to do that. I don't know whether or not he might be able to join this call.
You want to
Shall I just
him the link and see if he can join this call?
Yeah, we're all sitting obviously in very different parts of the country, but I will I will message him to see what he can do.
Okay.
wonders of modern technology. As you could see, I was on the call to Mr. Briggs. Apparently, he is able to join. I think he's got a link, so we'll wait for him to come on. I think you are now on mute, Mum.
Okay, thanks. So it looks like Michael is there now. Could he perhaps just confirm that he can see and hear us?
Yes, I'm here and I can see it.
Great. Thank you for joining us. So you can put your screen off if you wish, but that's great to know that you're here. Right, I think on that basis we will proceed if everybody's happy. I'm sorry about that slight delay to proceedings. So I think I'll just go back to the point where I was saying that we would take each of the proposals in turn. We would start with Craiginmoddie. That was the one on which the council had originally objected, but on the basis of communications on Friday, that objection seems to have been withdrawn, subject to a condition relating to the U25 accommodation works, and we can look at the detail of that condition in due course. However, notwithstanding that change of position, we obviously have comments across all three proposals and on cumulative matters. So I just want to make sure that the council is happy to respond across all three cases.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I just wanted to check at this point that parties were also aware of the other communication from the council on Friday in relation to the 3-ton restriction being lifted on the U27 road. And that was in relation to Knockcronal, but it is also relevant to Craiginmoddie. So I wanted to just make sure that all the parties had seen that, and I'll pick up on that as we go through the agenda. I see Mr. Hardy nodding. And we will obviously discuss matters relating to conditions. Now, the council circulated some conditions last night and again this morning, which I have to say is not entirely helpful for me or probably for the other parties. I believe that the version this morning is the latest position, but it is dated the 8th of March at the top. So I'm not quite sure. So perhaps if the council could just clarify the position on those conditions.
Ma'am, there's clearly been a mix-up in relation to the conditions that were sent out last night, and they were an earlier version. And I understand there's been a slight mix-up this morning as well, in that the version that's been sent out is the sort of whole list of conditions and the state that we're at in relation to discussions and negotiations in relation to all the conditions. That wasn't intended to be sent out. I'm told that there is going to be a list of the traffic and transport conditions as being sort of compiled in a simplistic form, because my understanding is there is virtual agreement on all the points between certainly the council and the various applicants. But at this stage, and I can only apologise that it's rather late in the day, that has not been circulated around everyone. That obviously does cause difficulties for this morning, but hopefully that will be rectified shortly. Well, I can only apologise on behalf of the council for that not being sent out and the error with the 2 emails last night and today.
Thank you. I mean, I think for the purposes of today, it might be better if we just stick to the 7th of April version. I appreciate that there may be updated positions, but rather than circulating other versions that we then have to try and get our heads around during the course of the day, I think it'd be better if we perhaps stick with the 7th of April and then we can discuss the changes to that as and when. Is that acceptable?
Well, the difficulty with that is it doesn't have all. I think the 7th of April version, it was that the original version, that the version that was sent out last night doesn't have all the traffic and transport conditions on it, which is a problem.
That's why I think perhaps if we just base our discussion on the 7th of April version, which we all have and have seen in advance, and then we can update it verbally in terms of the discussion.
Yeah, that's probably the best way at this stage, and then Mr. Callum will take us through each one and just go through what's happened in due course.
Everybody happy with that approach? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so obviously, depending on the outcome of the discussion today, we may still need to discuss some of the conditions at the conditions hearing session on the 20th of June. Although I note that the transport witnesses are not, currently participating in that session, so I would hope that we can fully address the matters relating to their evidence today. So before we turn to the first main item on the agenda, which would be item 2, does anyone have any other procedural questions that they want to raise at this stage? No, everybody content? Okay, so we will move on to item 2, which relates to Craiginmoddie, and the witness there, I understand, is Mr. Devaney. So the first question, 2A, was around route choice, and obviously we would just like clarity, first of all, that it remains your position that the U25 would provide the access point into the site. So that's essentially the route that you assessed, HEV access route 1, and that there wouldn't be any access via the U27 or from the south via Glentrool, which was the latter was a concern of Safe Streeting. And just while we're on that, just to clarify that your position on the use or otherwise of the U27 hasn't changed in light of that removal of the 3-ton restriction by the council. Obviously, we'll come to that in relation to Knockcronal later in the agenda, but I just wanted to clarify that that didn't have any implications for Craiginmoddie. So, Mr. Hardy.
I suspect Mr. Devaney can take, just treat him as the primary responder, and I'll jump in the normal way if I want to say something.
Great, thank you, Mr. Devaney.
Great, thank you. So I think there was 2 or 3 sort of questions in there, so I'll sort of take them in turn. The first one is just to confirm that our intention is very much to use the U25 as our access route, and we have no plans now to use the U27 on the east side of the site. I can also confirm that there's no intention to bring abnormal loads through Glentrool from the south. And in fact, our access route for abnormal loads will be from the Port of Ayr and down the A77 trunk roads, crossing the B734 to Elnington Terrace at Daly, and then we'd take a sort of offline route across to the U25 and then follow the U25 down to access the site on its west side.
And obviously there was some discussion on Tuesday evening about the new section of road from Daly, and not particularly that we're not talking here about the landscape and visual effects, but can you clarify that new section from Elnington Terrace is that only for the abnormal load route, or will construction traffic also use that, or will any proportion of it use the new section of road?
The intention was just to use that for abnormal loads.
And also, we did have some discussion yesterday. I appreciate that we haven't had much time to think about that, but we did have some discussion yesterday at the private water supply hearing around whether there would be any implications arising from the removal of the access road between turbines 2 and 3. So I'm not looking for a sort of wider discussion about that, but it was just from a transport perspective. I don't know whether the applicants had a chance to consider whether there's any sort of transport implications for the proposal if that section of access road was removed between turbines 2 and 3.
That's not something I've considered, ma'am.
No, okay. So I appreciate it was very short notice, but it is something that we'll come back to discuss with you.
Okay.
Marker on that. I'm going to move on to item B, but I will allow the other parties to say come in at that point once we've discussed that as well. So item B was about the Hadyard Hill access, and I know that the applicant has commented on that and whether any of the access could come through the Hadyard Hill site. But obviously Safe Streeting has referred specifically to that again in its statement. So that's CD 1701, paragraph 14. So I just wondered whether the applicant could say a little bit more about that. We know that that's not proposed and it's not been assessed, but given the concerns that have been raised about those visual effects of the new section of road from Daly, could you clarify what the barriers are to using the Hadyard Hill route for the abnormal load.
Yeah, sure. In terms of the abnormal loads, as I said in my hearing statement, there's no commercial agreement in place with the Hadyard Hill wind farm site to take access through their development. It must be recognised that the turbines in that particular development are much smaller, so that the suitability of the access tracks through there would all need to be considered again, and in all likelihood, the access tracks would need to be upgraded themselves to take the larger turbines. In addition to that, the sort of approaches to Hadyard Hill would also need to be assessed, and the likelihood is that there would be some mitigation works on the route to Hadyard Hill. So it might just be a case of simply moving the issue from one location to another there.
Okay, that's helpful. Could I ask the council if you'd like to comment on the responses to either of those questions?
Yes, ma'am. If I can hand over to Mr. Braidwood and he can address these points.
Morning, ma'am. In terms of Hadyard Hill, you know, I mean, within the curtilage of Hadyard Hill, Ayrshire Roads Alliance would have no view. However, we would have a view on the access in terms of mitigation that might be required with regarding sightlines.
Okay, I mean, obviously I'm not asking for a formal opinion on that. It was more to get the applicant's response to what Safe Straighten had said. Could I ask Safe Straighten to make any comments at this point? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a point of note, the reference to the CD in point B of the agenda is incorrect. Our statement is 021, not 001.
Okay, my apologies.
Just a reference. I mean, our concern here really was that there's an existing access route to a wind farm, which, okay, there might be not a commercial agreement between the applicant and the Hadyard Hill owner site, but the creation of a new AIL route, you know, would lead to disruption of landscape, habitats, and, you know, the associated effects of that, and whether any environmental impact assessment has or would be carried out if a new route is created. It just seems strange that there's a route there that isn't being used or, you know, isn't being considered. I don't know whether representatives from Daly would maybe like to add some further detail to that.
Okay, yeah, Daly?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, we would prefer it, obviously, to go via Hadyard. We don't really understand why you have to create yet another route on virgin land. I mean, it's bad enough that it's having to go up the U25 anyway. I don't know if anybody realizes how destructive it's going to be for just the people, as well as, you know, the roads and the habitats all the way up there. I don't know what else to say. It's just appalling that you're going to be using a one route. The other example would be Carrick Hill, where they actually have alternative routes. But this, they don't have any other option but to go on one route. And there's going to be a lot of traffic if it does go through.
Okay, thank you. I'll maybe ask Ms. Traynor if she wants to comment at this point, and then I'll come back to the applicant. Ms. Traynor, is there anything you want to add?
I'd like to express my concern as usual. I think the local experience of the Carrick Hill development has been an eye-opener for the local community, where extensive works have been done there. All of the HGV vehicles, I don't know the name of the road, it might be the U66 or 62, being used for the access for the Carrick Hill construction, has led to the complete closure of that road. So locals are denied access. There is an alternative route that can be used to go from the Girvan Valley across to Kirkoswald. Slightly longer, but at least there is an alternative route. I would be concerned about the lack of the alternative route should the impacts for using the U25 be significant. Some people would have a 40-mile, almost, I think, alternative route. And when we look at the Kirkhill development, the road was well planned. They said the road would be closed at certain points at certain times for 2 or 3 days here and then another bit 2 or 3 days. And it turns out that the road was unable to take that volume and weight of traffic and has collapsed completely and is now closed until I think it's at least the end of September. So the concern would be that a similar situation could develop if the U25 is used for this haulage route for HGVs.
Okay, thank you. I mean, obviously, we're going to come further down the agenda. Item D, we're going to talk about potential mitigation for that route, but perhaps the applicant could respond at this point just in terms of the sort of assessments that have been done for that route choice and anything more about the decisions that have informed why you're going for that route.
Yeah, and in terms of the route choice, that's really come about from the discussions we've had with the Ayrshire Roads Alliance about what would be the most appropriate route out of the 3 routes that were in the original EIA report. The U25 gives us the most direct route, shortest route, and by process of elimination, really it became the best route, and that led us on to a discussion about mitigation, and we were able to come up then with a good scheme of mitigation, which is both preventative as well as safeguarding the interests of existing road users there. So I take on board the comments there that have been made about Kirkhill wind farm, but I think this scheme of mitigation goes that a little bit further by putting in some preventative measures as well as being reactive to the damage that's caused during the construction period.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, item C on the agenda is relevant as well in terms of your route choice. Sorry, I see hands are going up, so I'll go back to Mr. Ross. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wondered if the applicant could respond to my comment regarding the environmental impact assessment of the new AL route and the destruction of landscape and habitat. Has that been considered?
Mr. Devaney?
Yeah, it's part of the application, the abnormal loads route. What I would say is, and it's maybe got a little bit forgotten here, is that'll be a temporary route for abnormal load vehicles. If you look at the EIA, there's a total of 140 vehicles associated with the delivery of the turbines, and that'll probably occur over a sort of 2 to 3 month period, and there'll only be a handful of vehicles each time the turbines come through there, and at the end of the project, that route can actually be restored substantially to the way it is just now. So the track may well be left underneath, but it's highly likely that some restorative landscape works will take place there, and so that we can help to restore that sort of landscape side of things.
Could I ask Mr. Devaney, is that restoration work part of the conditions at present?
I'm not sure.
Maybe something we can discuss when we get to that point. And I wonder whether you could perhaps just give the references to the relevant parts of the EIA for Mr. Ross's benefit, so that he could look at the assessment of that route.
Certainly. Just I was referring there to table 11.11, which is on page 14 of the EIA chapter.
But what's the CD reference for that document, if you have it?
2 seconds.
Sorry, apologies. It's just there's so many proposals and so many different documents.
There is.
I'll have the right one.
So it's CD 001.009.
And then table 11.1.
That gives the number of turbine deliveries.
Thank you. I mean, while the number of vehicle movements may be small, it would, the creation of that route would, destroy landscape and habitat. So it doesn't really relate to the number of vehicle movements. It's the removal of landscape and habitat. And then you say it can be, reinstated at the end, but reinstatement are not guaranteed to restore exactly what was there before.
I just check that reference just as we're going along. Thank you. So are there any other comments about route choice? Daily Community Council?
Yes. You were talking about preventative measures. What were they?
Well, we will be talking about mitigation under item 6. So perhaps that will cover your questions you can maybe ask over that. Okay. If we can move on to item C, because it is related to the route choice, and obviously, unfortunately, there didn't appear to be a final position in relation to the on-site borrow pits. Although there is a certain amount of optimism presented on this in the hearing statement. I think paragraphs 5.6 and 5.7 of your hearing statement, which is CD 1312. And we note the evidence on traffic volumes and effects, but obviously the decision on whether it's on-site borrow pits or not has implications for certain routes and for certain settlements, particularly Daly, and that has been raised by Daly Community Council. So we wonder whether the potential for consent to be granted on the basis of on-site borrow pits would present a problem for the applicant, or whether you could provide any update on your position on that at this stage. So any, or Mr. Hardy?
Yeah, sure. In relation to, as it stands, the item C, resolution of the aggregate strategy, at this point in time, the intention is very much to win stone on site. Borrow pit locations have been identified on site, and this is a sort of normal position to be in at this time. And then post consent, there'll be further work done on these borrow pits to test both the quantity of stone and the quality of stone that can be taken from those borrow pits. It's very much in both the developer and the appointed main contractor. It's in their sort of financial interests to win stone on site. Obviously, it's much more economically sustainable to win stone on site rather than importing it from local quarries. So the original EIA looked at two scenarios here. One is the sort of worst case where we have to bring all stone in. And the second scenario considered a situation where we managed to win all stone on site. From experience, the final position probably lies somewhere in between those two. And the factors that affect that really are, the quality of the stone that we can win on site. Will that be suitable for all the needs of development? And will we get the volume of stone that we anticipate could be won from those borrow pits? Sometimes it's necessary to use a sort of combination of the stone that can be won on site, and then perhaps some slightly better quality stone can be brought in just as a sort of, a finishing surface, or in areas where additional loading is required. But from experience, a high percentage of the stone can be won on wind farm sites.
Okay, and would there be any assessment of that prior to any consent being granted? Or is that something that would come after?
It would come after.
Okay, could I ask the council just first for any comments on the implications of on-site borrow pits or otherwise in terms of traffic? Do you have any comments? Mr. Batewood?
Yes, ma'am. The use of borrow pits would obviously be the council's preferred position. That would certainly reduce the number of vehicle movements on the network of roads. If there was a mixture of imported stone and borrowed and the use of borrow pits, then the Roads Authority, Ayrshire Roads Alliance, would discuss options with the applicant.
Well, again, that's maybe something we can pick up in conditions. Could I ask the other parties if they'd like to comment? Mr. Ross?
Thank you. If agreement isn't reached before determination, that would have to be made on the worst case assessment that all stone is brought in from off-site. That's the point I'd like to make.
Do you have any particular concerns that you want to raise?
Regarding the number of trips or just the fact that it's on or off-site?
Just effects on the area. Should it be off-site?
Off-site will have a greater impact, obviously, on Islington Terrace and traffic flow, so that's our main concern.
Early Community Council, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think we need to kind of clarify a bit better how many trips there's going to be, because this will affect Eldington Terrace, all the residents there. You know, we need to know what the maximum is going to be.
And I think that has been identified. Mr. Devaney, could you respond?
I don't know if that is correct, what's written there.
Well, could we allow Mr. Devaney to respond?
If you could, please.
Yeah, the EIA has been based on a worst case scenario, and then there's a comparison table within the EIA that shows the benefit that the borrow pits bring, and that shows we could actually reduce the number of HGV trips by over 10,000.
Can you just pinpoint that table for us again, please, Mr. Devaney?
Yeah, sure.
Is that in CD19 again?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
I'm just going to find you the comparison table here if I can.
Thank you.
Comparison table is 1112, table 1112 on page 15. I think maybe just in response to the point that was made there, you know, the assessment has been based on very much a worst case here, and mitigation is based on the worst case. So if we're able to use the borrow pits and reduce the number of trips here as expected, then it can be only additional betterment is achieved here. But we have been assessed at this point on the worst case.
Okay, so table 1112 is the on-site, and then table 1111 is the off-site.
Right, and the assessment of effects is actually based on table 1111, and table 1112 is just there for comparison to show the benefit that could be gained from the on-site borrow pits.
Okay. And I confirm that the council's content with that assessment in terms of the worst case scenario. Mr. Braidwood?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Ms. Traynor, did you want to add anything on this item?
I've just very briefly, I think it's good that the worst case scenario numbers have been given for the heavy goods vehicles, numbers and volume of traffic. I can tell you in my experience, the air track to the house was upgraded for forestry use. And the idea was that they would source stone from on site. Turned out that they couldn't source any stone on site, and it all had to be brought in from Turmitchell. Thank you.
Is there anything that the applicant could say in response to that in terms of the quality of the stone again, or anything to respond to Ms. Traynor?
think all we can say is that borrow pick locations have been identified on site here, and that maybe takes things that little bit further.
Okay. Mr. Callan?
Yeah, I just wanted to drop in at the end of that conversation that NPF 4 policy 33 supports borrow pits to be on site as much as possible in terms of sustainability and travel and impact on the surrounding environment.
Okay, thank you. It may be touched on further at the policy hearing, but that's helpful for the reference. So I think if we could move on to the proposed mitigation scheme in relation to the U25s, that's item 2D. And obviously the council's position on the U25 accommodation works has now changed. Is it therefore necessary that we look at the applicant's proposed mitigation scheme as set out, or is the council content that this is likely to be acceptable and possible to agree through the new conditions? Perhaps Mr. Callan could say something about that.
Yeah, it's my understanding that we have agreed a condition and also the proposed mitigation on the applicant.
So for the benefit of the others, could we just get the reference for what is the updated position?
Bear with me. Yes, a condition that has been by and large agreed with the applicant for Craiginmoddie says.
Could you give us a reference so we could get it up on screen? Is that in the latest version that's just come in, or is it?
It is in the latest version that has just come in. So do you want me to read it, communicate it verbally?
Yes, you will need to communicate it verbally, but I do think I'll have the version here for myself. Can you hold on for 1 second? Okay, proceed, please.
Yeah, the wording, there should be no commencement of development until the accommodation works plan has been submitted to and approved in writing by the Planning Authority in consultation with Ayrshire Roads Alliance. It goes on to list out several criteria. The accommodation works plan shall be generally in accordance with the accommodation work shown on the sister proposed scheme of mitigation sheets, 1 to 10 inclusive drawing numbers. Do you need the drawing number references?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, and shall set out the details and specification of what we've added in just this morning, just for the benefit for the applicants as well, is to say on and off-site roadworks to the U25 road required for the safe access and egress of general construction traffic to and from the site, together with a programme for the implementation of all such accommodation works, including but not limited to A, localised road widening, B, works to strengthen sections of the road, and C, the installation of intervisible passing places between junctions with the B741 and the U66. Criteria 3, the approved accommodation works plan shall thereafter be implemented in accordance with the approved works programme, and the reason for it is the interest of safe and efficient management of local roads.
Okay, that's helpful. So that really, for summary there, is that the accommodation works will include but are not limited to road widening and localised road widening, works to strengthen sections of the road and intervisible passing places at various points along the road. So could the applicant just comment on that wording? Are you content with that? Is there anything more that you could say about the programme of works that will be undertaken on that road, given some of the concerns that have been raised by the local residents?
Yeah, I can maybe just comment. I think we're happy with the wording of the condition. I think that's the second iteration. So our comments have been taken on board, so we're happy with the way it's now drafted. In terms of timing, I think there's various parts to the mitigation scheme. So probably the timing of the actual works is for further discussion with the Ayrshire Roads Alliance. Perhaps Mr. Braidwood can comment on that as well. But one of the preventative measures was an overlay to the surface, a 40mm tarmac overlay. And I would be pretty sure that the council would be looking for that in advance of the works commencing. That there are some widening works for abnormal loads and some verge reinforcement works as well. So I would imagine that the verge reinforcement works should happen early in the programme, but perhaps some of the widening works for abnormal loads could be left to a later date. I think that the timing of the works is probably a matter for further discussion.
Yeah, there certainly was an outstanding matter there, I think, about whether the accommodation works needed to be completed in full before development could commence. So are you saying that that's still a matter that's in dispute from your perspective?
I don't think it's in dispute. There's perhaps just further conversation to be had on that. It's just a matter that hasn't been discussed as yet.
Okay, so if I could ask the council, Mr. Braidwood, if you could comment on those timing issues and also whether there's any need to add any of those specific measures that Mr. Devaney mentioned into the conditions, or you're content with the broad brush wording that's in the condition.
Thank you, ma'am. The council are content with the wording in the condition.
And what about the issue of timing in terms of when all of these measures need to be implemented?
In terms of the timing, obviously we would like to see the 40mm overlay carried out at the start, and also the edge protection. In terms of the widening, then that's a matter of a discussion with the applicant in terms of his programme works. Thank you.
I'll just come back to Mr. Devaney on that first, and then I'll come to the other parties. Is there anything to comment there about the timing from what Mr. Braidwood said?
No, I think that's very much in line with our own thinking.
And presumably that can be agreed with the council through the accommodations work plan. You're both content with that? Mr. Braidwood's nodding. Yeah.
That's right. There would be a further technical approval process to follow here post consent for those accommodation works.
Thank you.
That would be an appropriate time to talk about the timing, I suspect.
Okay. Daily Community Council, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, just a brief one. Just a slight concern about weight. Particularly, I think at the bottom of the Dobbingston turnoff, I think there's a little bridge down there, which I think you've got down as being upgraded, or the road being upgraded. I mean, is it going to be able to support it, or is the whole bridge going to be totally redone?
Mr. Devaney, could you comment?
Yeah, Ayrshire Roads Alliance haven't flagged any sort of weak structures to us or anything, so we're content that the bridge should be able to take the weight of the vehicles that's placed upon it, and there will of course be an agreement in place to sort any accelerated wear and tear on the route. So if any damage occurs, then that lies at our door.
Mr. Braidwood, are you happy with that? There's nothing been flagged around that particular point in the route?
Our structures team hasn't identified any issues.
Okay, that's helpful. Mr. Ross or Ms. Traynor, any other comments?
Yeah, on the mitigation drawings, there's an area shown for verge reinforcement widening and oversailed areas with swept path analysis. Does the applicant or the council own all the land where oversailing might take place?
Would the applicant like to comment on that?
Yeah, I can confirm. I think that all the oversail areas is within land under the applicant's control or within roads adopted land.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Ross? Okay. Ms. Traynor?
I would think having looked at the proposed works, I think you referred to them as accommodations, putting in bypass areas, road widening, deepening the road, etc. I think the local population are concerned in that there are a number of people who live locally along the U25 who have carers visiting 2 to 3 times a day. They need help to get up in the morning, they need help to go to bed at night. There are medications getting dispensed. There are a number of people, particularly between the B714, the Daly to Cross Hill Road, and up as far as Delamford. And also there are emergency response systems in place for some of these very vulnerable people. So if they fall, then there's an automatic response where someone is contacted by a thing around their neck. They then have to come here. I'm not referring to myself yet, but will the road be open, or will there be a 40-mile detour when, for instance, a passing place has been put in, or where other widening works or whatever are taking place? How do emergency vehicles get in during these works? And how do the carers get to these very vulnerable people? That's my question.
I think that's a useful question, and also in relation to the accommodation works, but also in, perhaps you could say a little bit, Mr. Devaney, about the abnormal load as well and how that might be handled in terms of access.
Yeah, I think what we can say is I think there's some valid points in there that the contractor will need to keep to take on board. And there's obviously a need to maintain access through the construction works here. You know, the intent is to keep the road open. And what we're doing is we're putting in passing places to try and assist with traffic flow along that road so that we get two-way flow along that road. So that should help to relieve the inconvenience on any residents along that road. And the actual methodology for how we put in verge reinforcement works and putting in the passing places, you know, will there be a need for some temporary traffic management and things like that? That's all detail that will need to be worked through with the Ayrshire Roads Alliance and with the main contractor who comes on board. But I have to say this is very typical of a wind farm development where we have a single track road access. You know, we've been through this process many times before, and we always come to, you know, a solution here, and very much we'll try and keep the local community interests at heart here.
Also, could you say a little bit about the abnormal load, because obviously you know, there can be a situation where the slow moving load can cause problems for access. People get stuck behind that. Is there anything you can say about that?
So abnormal loads, it's a well planned event and it's a well managed event. So the police are involved, escort vehicles are involved, and that last part of the route will be quite slow for abnormal loads travelling along it. But we'll tend to move these abnormal loads at periods where we're not expecting lots of other users on the road. It will be posted in advance when these movements will be happening. Local residents will all know when they're happening, and we'll try to keep the inconvenience to an absolute minimum.
Okay, Mr. Braidwood, is there anything you would like to say about the arrangements for, you know, upgrading the roads? How might that affect access and also the abnormal load?
There will be periods of time that access will be restricted in terms of surfacing with applying the 40 millimetre overlay. We would be looking for a construction traffic management plan from the applicant detailing how he was going to carry out those works. Local access would have to be maintained at all times. An emergency access is always given during a road closure. Blue lights will always get through. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Ms. Traynor?
Yes, thank you. It does.
Okay, thank you. Daily Community Council?
Yeah, is anybody actually going to speak to the people that are actually right next door to the roads? Because there's a few houses that are right by the road. They are going to be severely affected by the actual heavy goods and also the possible construction of the road. So somebody should actually go and speak to these people, not just make the assumption that, you know, they will hear something in the grapevine.
Is that something that the applicants have done so far, or is it something that they would do?
Certainly in relation to abnormal loads, there'll be a notification procedure in place, and good practice would be to knock on the doors and let them know, keep them informed about what's happening.
Sorry, I'm not just meaning the abnormal loads, I mean the whole construction of the road, because they will be severely you know, under pressure, and the heavy goods as well. I mean, are they going to get any compensation for all the noise and the dust and everything else that's going on?
Yeah, the whole sort of notification procedures and things, and consultation with the local communities, it would be a key part of the construction stage traffic management plan, and a lot of that is actually done through community councils like yourselves.
Nothing's happened yet.
Well, we will be going on to discuss the traffic management plan and some of the measures in that. Ms. Traynor, you've got your hand up again. Yes.
Yes, just following up from what Helena has just raised, the contact with people. For instance, the people who have the carers going in, will they be contacted directly to be warned, for instance, if there's going to be restrictions, or, and I don't mean the abnormal loads, I mean the improvements to the U25. Will they be notified when there's likely to be any short-term closures or anything like that? And some of these people don't have, how can I put it, the capacity to deal with certain things, for instance, visually impaired people. So written information to them is useless. My concern is that the carers get in and out when they are required, that people are not left with carers unable to reach them without doing a 40-mile detour. I mean, Kevin said that the emergency vehicles would always have access, but carers don't have a blue light.
I wonder if the applicants are aware of those properties. I don't know whether that's a discussion that Ms. Traynor you could have with the applicant separately to make sure that they're aware of which properties you're talking about. But I don't know whether just now Mr. Devaney or the council could give any comment about how that communication might work.
I think there's clearly some concerns there with the community that we'll have to take on board as a sort of construction planning stage sort of gets underway. So I think we hear the concerns. We're happy to take those on board. I think the construction stage traffic management plan is sort of where we would set out how that consultation, if you like, would be undertaken. But we certainly hear the concerns.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Traynor?
Sorry.
That's okay. No more questions? Or you do?
No, I do, but I've forgotten what it is now.
Okay, take your time.
I'll come back to it.
Okay. So I think I was going to move on to item E on the agenda, which is the construction transport management plan. This obviously has a bit of crossover with item H as well in terms of some of the matters, but I'm going to focus this item on the potential impacts in terms of existing routes, particularly from the perspective of walkers and cyclists. And I note from the Infrastructure and Human Health chapter of the EIA, so that's CD 137, paragraphs 14.37 onwards. So that's highlighting core paths in the vicinity of the access road, some of which cross over the U25. I think core paths is at 41, 42, and 46. So am I right that the proposed mitigation of any effects on these paths has been considered? Would that be signage, temporary fencing? Are there any other elements of the traffic management plan which would help to address any effects on these routes? Mr. Devaney?
Yeah, you've mentioned a few of the sort of mitigation measures there, and there's other things like a contractor speed limit down the U25 would be put in place. We've obviously got a designated route now for construction vehicles, so that helps to sort of relieve the pressure on other routes that may have core paths either crossing them or be core paths themselves. We'd probably put in sort of controlled crossing points of the U25, so that you don't have people simply, sort of cycling straight across the road. You would put in, some signage and a barrier just to kind of stop them. It wouldn't be a manned barrier, but just sort of point where both the user of the core path knows that they're crossing a route that's been used by construction vehicles. And also the flip side of that is that the construction vehicles know that there's walkers, cyclists, equestrians crossing the route at that point. Signage you've mentioned, obviously, and then there's a bit of education to do around this as well for the construction personnel. So maybe a staff induction process, driver training, and a sort of contractor's code of conduct comes into play here as well. We've talked about the measures to reduce the vehicle movements, and so the construction stage traffic management plan, will set out a number of measures that can put in place there, sort of reuse and recycling of materials on site, everything to just try and reduce the number of vehicles that we're using that U25. We'll also have fixed working hours on the site, and so that's sort of evening and weekend, Saturday mornings, we might still be doing some work, but at a reduced level. So at the times where the core paths are going to be used the most, we'll try to keep traffic levels to a minimum there. And
what about, could I just ask, sorry, what about the use of the U25 itself for, say, cyclists? Because cycling is something that's taken part across the whole area. What measures would help for those users?
I think certainly the mitigation scheme that we're moving in with these, bringing in with the additional passing places along that route would certainly assist. And then there's a condition in as well for an access management plan, and that provides a good opportunity for the developer to discuss with the access officer at the council and just how best to manage these situations.
Okay, yeah, we'll say a little bit more about access management plan in a minute. I think Mr. Ross, you had your hand up first. Are you on mute, I think, Mr. Ross?
I'm on mute. Yeah, number of core paths across the U25, but as you say, core path 42 and 46 actually run along the U25. So the kind of the issues of passing places, yeah, but along the road here from straight and south down the Gurdon Valley, we have timber lorries travelling at high speed around corners, blind corners. And it is quite an intimidating experience for walkers and cyclists. So away from points where passing places are provided, there would still be that intimidation for cyclists and walkers with a high level of HGV movement.
Okay, thank you. Ms Traynor?
Going back to what Mr Devaney has just said about a speed limit being imposed on the heavy goods vehicles for the U25, what would that speed limit be? And would it be written in somewhere that vehicles should not travel in convoy? Because we have already experienced difficulties with this on the U25. Hadyard Hill vans racing up and down the road, near misses which have been reported to the police. It's an issue for local residents.
Mr Devaney?
Yeah, if I could come back on that, the speed limit, that'd be something that we agreed with the Ayrshire Roads Alliance, but generally something like 10 mile an hour along that route would be okay for HGVs. Prevention of convoys, that's usually a key measure in any construction stage traffic management plans for HGVs.
Okay, Mr Braidwood, is there anything you'd like to add from council's perspective?
The council would be satisfied in terms of a speed restriction, and we would put a speed restriction in place through discussions with the applicant. We do it on a regular basis with timber transport vehicles, and we always expect no convoying. Thank you.
Mr Ross, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, thank you. There are 20 mile an hour speed limits in Straighton, Daly and Cross Hill, which is widely ignored by all traffic, including logging vehicles at the moment. So there needs to be some enforcement of that 10 mile an hour speed limit to be effective.
Thank you. Mr Braid, would you comment on that in terms of the enforcement matter on speed limits and on other elements of the construction management plan, for example? How does the council enforce that?
Well, the council doesn't have the powers to enforce speeding. That is a matter, and that's a moving traffic offence. So therefore, that's down to road policing or Police Scotland to carry out any enforcement and speeding. We do have regular meetings with Police Scotland through a liaison meeting, and we highlight areas where communities have referred speeding issues to us. Thank you.
Mr Ross?
That does get away from the point that the 20 mile an hour limits we've got already are ignored.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to mention in the proposed construction traffic management plan, there is a reference to there being a list of contacts and identification of a nominated person to whom road safety issues can be referred. Would the applicant or the council be able to say a little bit more about that? Would that be something that could help in this regard?
Yeah, I can maybe say something about that. Be normal practice for the site to sort of appoint a liaison officer, and there'll be a point of contact at the site. So if local people have concerns about speeding vehicles, there would be a point of contact, and there'd also be a point of contact between the site and the council. And so the council start to receive complaints about speeding and things as well, then there is a conduit to address these matters.
Okay. Mr Ross, does that answer your question to some extent? Or do you have a different point?
To some extent, thank you.
You've still got your hand up. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. And are there any other matters that the council wants to raise or the applicant around the detail of the condition on the transport management plan? I don't have any particular questions to ask. Is that generally an agreement between the two? Yep. Mr Devaney? Yep.
It is indeed, yes.
Thank you. So item F was just a quick reference to the fact that there have been mention of section 69, section 96 agreements at various points. I think the applicant has considered in its statement that a section 69 agreement would not be appropriate. So I just wondered whether that was anything that we needed to discuss today. Is that something that, obviously it's not related to the draft conditions directly, but I wondered if the council wanted to say anything about that today.
Just in relation to that, Mr. Braidwood will come back on that, but the council are just looking for a section 96 agreement in relation to this. Mr. Braidwood will explain that.
Is there anything you want to add, Mr. Braidwood, or is that?
No, I'm satisfied with a section 96 agreement for any damage to the road network.
Okay, that's helpful. Item G is just a quick question about the council statement. So that's CD 1315. Paragraph 4.2 of that statement talks about the timber transport plan. And we just wanted to clarify from the council's point of view what we should take from that extract in relation to Craiginmoddie. What does it mean for the proposal from your perspective?
In terms of our statement regarding the timber transport, so all of these routes are highlighted for timber transport. Some of them may be severely restricted, and that could be down to a weak bridge or a right-hand bend. A consultation route, for example, the U25 to Mlamford, then the timber company or the haulier or the forester would have to consult with the local community and the local authority in terms of traffic movements of timber out of the forestry area. An excluded route is an area where we just would not allow any HGV timber lorries to go down because of, again, it could be the potential for a weak structure, etc. And severely restricted routes, it may be that we would be seeking a reduced speed limit from an HG for timber lorries going down that route.
But in relation to the proposal, which is using the U25, so you're basically saying that the timber companies will have to do consultation on that route.
Yeah,
that could be coinciding with construction movements.
It could be, yes.
There will be consultation. Okay. So item item H, I should say. We've talked a little bit about some of the existing routes and trails, and I just wanted to find out a little bit more about the proposed new pathway linkages that have been talked about, in particular, really what certainty there is around the ability to deliver those enhancements. And would you expect to provide any more detail on those in the proposed access management plan condition or in any other conditions? And the other point we wanted to ask was just a bit about management of those linkages. Does that fall to the applicant or the landowner? So I wonder if Mr. Devaney could say a little bit more about those matters.
Yeah, sure. I think certainly the access management plan is the place where this would be considered, and the sort of final arrangements for what access will be available. And how the core paths would link together. I think it's a good opportunity here through the creation of the access track network on the site to link the core paths that lie both to the east and west of the site. But I think the access management plan is exactly where this will be considered, and it will provide detail on, will there be car parking available, that sort of things, and will signage be provided for routes? Will all routes be available? Will there be any areas that need to be secured off for any reason? And will there be a circular route, or will there simply be a route through the site? So there's a lot of possibilities here, and there's been some good examples in the past where the wind farm access tracks have been opened up to the public and becomes a really good amenity for walking and cycling.
Thank you. We did also hear on Tuesday night some of the concerns from the community about that sort of access being promised in other proposals, but actually gates being locked so that people couldn't use those routes. So obviously you can't comment on what another operator is doing, but I wondered if you could comment on those sort of specific issues and how access will be maintained, and then perhaps ask the other parties to come in as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the access management plan will start to set out what our actual commitment is here, and then we can be held to that thereafter.
Daily Community Council?
Yeah, basically agreeing with what you've just said, and we have to keep an eye on that because they promise a lot, developers, I mean, promise a lot and don't always deliver. And that's often the case, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
So just keep an eye.
Thank you. I was just going to ask the council, Mr. Braidwood, is there anything you could say about what you would want secured in the access management plan and how you might ensure that access is maintained?
That wouldn't be for the road service, that would be for our access officer, and that's something that she would have to discuss with the applicant.
Presumably she'll be involved in looking at that access management plan condition.
Yes, she would be.
Mr. Callan? You're on mute, Mr. Callan.
Apologies. Thank you, ma'am. The access management plan, as drafted in the the conditions, I think it's currently sitting at number 19. That has been by and large agreed with all the applicants across in terms of how access will be facilitated, disruption there would be if there's any diversions that may be required, and that will all have to be agreed with the council.
Okay. Any other comments on that? No. Okay, so I think that takes us to the end of item 2, and we have been going for just over an hour since we had our slightly delayed start. So I think we'll just have a short break just now before we turn to discuss Carrick, if that's okay with everybody. If we could just come back in about 10 minutes, 11:40, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Mr. Bray's chair is empty, so we'll wait a moment. I'm just going to wait a moment and hopefully Mr. Bray will appear. Excellent, he's back. Ms. Traynor, you have your hand up. Do you have a question just now?
I'm sorry, it just occurred to me. It's going back a wee bit. You mentioned earlier, Mrs. Leaven, about the applicant getting information from me regarding people who have carers, etc. I am not able to provide that information. I have the right to speak for the residents of Knockcronal. That's all. I think the applicant would have to, I can certainly point out where I think, but I only know the people round about us, and there will be a significant number of other people in the same boat.
Yeah, no, I don't want to place that responsibility on you. It was just whether if you had information that you could give to them, that's great. But I'm sure they will be taking that point and hopefully considering it.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 3 on the agenda now, which is to do with Carrick. So we'll have a slight change of personnel. So item 3A, again, we're looking at route choice here for the Carrick proposal. And we note that the abnormal load route is from the south, and an assessment has been made of the general construction routes from the north and from the south, which obviously has implications for a range of different routes and settlements. And obviously we would have wanted to be in a position to recommend a planned route to ministers on the basis of the evidence that's been presented. So we just wondered whether the applicant was now in a position to have a preferred route or whether you're still looking at both options. So Mr. MacLeod or Mr. or your witness? Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bissett for the Carrick applicant. In terms of the construction traffic route choice, we have no further information on that at this time. And until there is a principal contractor appointed, we would not be able to confirm what the construction traffic access route would be. However, in terms of the abnormal load delivery route, that is confirmed to be from the south, as per the environmental impact assessment.
And would it be your intention to use both routes for construction and traffic, or are you going to select one route for construction traffic? And if it is both, is there anything you can say on the sort of proportion of vehicle movements between both?
Again, at this stage, it's difficult to say. I think it would be I think it would be appropriate to use both routes from the north and south for construction traffic, depending on where the construction vehicles are originating from and where they're going to. I don't have any further information on the percentage that may use the route from the north or the south at this time. What I can say is that in terms of the assessment that we undertook, we've assumed a worst case assessment. So every single route has been assessed to take 100% of the construction traffic to show what the impact of that could be. However, that scenario is unlikely to occur in reality.
Okay, I won't take questions from others at this point. I'll just go straight on to B because these two items kind of go together. Obviously, depending on which route is used, if one or the other is chosen, obviously that has concerns have been raised about the amount and the speed of vehicles travelling south out of Strayton past the school. And also, I think concerns have been raised about traffic travelling along Main Street in Daly, where other local facilities are located. So I wondered whether the applicant could point to any specific measures that were proposed to address those concerns, for example, things that might go into the traffic management plan. And then I'll ask other parties to comment after that.
In terms of the construction traffic management plan, I think reference to CD 2.161, we talk about the construction traffic and specifically avoiding the peak periods. So there would be an intention to not route construction traffic past schools during effectively the school drop-off time and the pick-up times in any event.
Is there anything else to say, for example, around speed limits or any other practical measures?
Well, there's speed limits enforced at the moment in front of the schools, and I believe it's 20 miles an hour. As part of the construction traffic management plan, as it was referred to earlier by Mr. Paveni, I think, and Mr. Braidwood, that it would be intention to enforce through the construction traffic management plan speed limits incumbent upon the contractors in terms of being good neighbours for the construction of the proposed development.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to comment on the route choice in relation to Carrick? No. Okay. And does the council? Oh, sorry. Lots of hands have come up now. I don't know whether there was a delay in the connection there.
Yeah,
sorry, Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross has got number 1 against him, so you can go first.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes, regarding the routing from the south, as well as a split for the north-south traffic, we'd like to know a split of the south, the traffic from the south, either coming on the A714 up to Girvan, as opposed to the route through Glentrool and the Carrick Forest. Both of those routes are identified for HGV potential access, with the route through Glentrool as the abnormal load, but we'd like to further detail on the split of HGV traffic on the route approach from the south. With regards the impact to Main Street Daily, Daily would have traffic from Craiginmoddie running along Eglinton Terrace and traffic for Carrick running along Main Street. I know we're going to talk later about the potential phasing of the schemes, but if those schemes run concurrently, then Daily would be inundated with high levels of HGV traffic during the day. With regard avoiding school opening and closing times, if those hours are taken out of the working day, would kind of further exacerbate the frequency of HGV vehicles during the remaining hours of working days. As mentioned, both Creighton and Daily, the routes past schools, playgrounds, community facilities, both are subject to 20-mile speed limits, have speed humps. Vehicles passing along speed humps have to slow down and accelerate. They've got emissions and noise problems there, both in Daily and Creighton. So there's a wide range of issues relating to the routing for Carrick and the other schemes, but I guess we'll talk about that later when we talk about cumulative effects.
That's right. We can pick that up in relation to all 3, but I will go on and ask Helena if you'd like to make any comments.
No further comments. It's just reiterating what he's just said. Actually, he's said it very, very concisely. Yep, exactly what he said.
Okay, Mr. Callan, you have your hand up. Would you like to comment at this point?
I do. Thank you, ma'am. Just in relation to the proposed construction traffic management plan condition, in relation to Carrick, it makes specific reference to approved in writing by the planning authority in consultation with Dumfries and Galloway Council. I would suggest that maybe that gets adjusted if there is traffic going to be coming in from both the north and the south, and to capture the other relevant local authorities. Okay.
Would Mr. Bissett like to respond to specific comment? Sorry, my audio is going a bit strange here, but if you could carry on, I can hear you okay.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. In terms of Mr. Ross's first comment on the percentage of traffic from routes to the south, again, we don't have any further information on what that might be at this time until we actually have a principal contractor on board. However, I would reiterate that we have assessed all routes that were agreed with Ayrshire Roads Alliance within the study network, or to inform the study network. We've assessed 100% of the traffic on all of the routes as part of the EIA process. In terms of the second point Mr. Ross made for traffic through Daly and the cumulative assessment, we're going to come on to the cumulative assessment as a further point later on in the agenda, so we can talk to that then. But if we talk about the HGV movements being restricted in hours, in other words, they won't travel past the school during the school opening and closing times. I'm not sure what Mr. Ross's comment was in relation to what that would do in terms of HGV movements, but what I can say is that, and again, we'll probably come on to this further on the agenda, the applicant proposes the use of borrow pits on site, as is the case with all the wind farms, to reduce significantly the traffic impact from construction activities. And it's our intention that that would be the case for this development, and that should substantially reduce traffic on the network for construction activities.
And again, Mr. Bissett, is there anything you can say about the sort of level of optimism you have around on-site borrow pits at this stage?
I think at this stage we have assessed within the EIA, which is CD 2.13, paragraph 75 on PDF page 12. We consider that approximately 144,000 cubic meters of material is required. And at this stage, we've assessed that there could be up to 339,000 cubic meters of material available through borrow pits on site. So I think, you know, we're fairly confident that we can say that we've got 2.5 times as much material potentially available as would be required. So it would be reasonable to say that we should be able to cover all the requirements on site from on-site borrow pits for construction activities of the tracks.
Okay, I mean, I'm straying slightly into item 3, but I will come back and make sure that nobody has any other comments on item B. But item C, I am conscious that the aggregate strategy might come up in conversation tomorrow as part of the Pete hearing in relation to Carrick. But there is also reference in, it's actually in Craiginmoddie's hearing statement, paragraph 10.6 of Craiginmoddie's hearing statement, which I think is 1312, is that right? That it talks about potential use of Tor Mitchell Quarry by Carrick. And that's not something that you've particularly discussed today, but is that still under consideration if borrow pits don't work, and therefore, you know, there are different transport implications, particularly for Daly from that?
We haven't specifically considered the use of Tor Mitchell Quarry within our assessments, or we haven't referenced it specifically. We have obviously assumed that all construction traffic is assessed as being off-site. In other words, the worst case assessment has been taken at the moment to assume that there will be no use of borrow pits at all. So we have undertaken the worst case assessment. However, what I would say is that it is very much the intention that we will pursue borrow pits on site. It would reduce a significant amount of traffic on the road network. I think it's of the order of 17,000 movements. If we can source our aggregate on site.
Okay, I understand that. And if that wasn't possible, is Tor Mitchell Quarry the option, or are there other options in terms of
So
site?
Tor Mitchell to the west is one of the option, and I believe there is a quarry further to the north. Its name escapes me at the moment, but certainly they are the two closest quarries that could be used. And we have assessed the relevant parts of the study network within the EIA for 100% of construction traffic.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Traynor, you got your hand up with the number 1 next to it. Do you have any comments?
Thank you. I was just going to ask the question. I don't know this gentleman's name. The Carrick applicants that we label mentioned that you would take into consideration the opening times and closing times for the schools for Daly Main Street. Another consideration, and I don't know if this has been considered, how will you know, for instance, if there is a funeral taking place in Daly, and will you adapt the movement of HGV vehicles should there be a funeral, or should there be an event taking place in the community centre, both of which are on the main street?
Mr. Bissett, would you like to respond? Is there some way of sort of liaison with the community?
I think this is a specific matter that would have to be dealt with through the construction traffic management plan. It's certainly not something that I've heard come up in the past, but it's certainly something that we can look at and take on board as part of the CTMP and the liaison process with Ayrshire Roads Allowance during the construction process. But I take your point on board that it's something that should be considered.
Thank you. Mr. Ross, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Just to kind of clarify my point regarding the school opening hours that Mr. Bissett raised. Carrick's forecasting 104 HGV movements per day. So over a 12-hour working day, it rates around kind of 8 HGV movements per hour. If you take out an hour in the morning and the mid-afternoon for school arrivals and departures, you would then concentrate those 104 movements over a shorter time period. So resulting in maybe kind of 10 or 11 HGV movements per hour. So that was the point I was making.
Thank you. Does the council want to say anything in response to any of those matters?
Thank you, ma'am. In terms of the vehicle movements during the day, it is normal practice for the Ayrshire Roads Alliance to apply a restriction around schools, so vehicle movements can't commence until 9:30 in the day, and then they can't commence, at 3:30 in the afternoon, that sort of thing. So, but that's a discussion we would have with the applicant through his construction management plan. In terms of vehicles going through the villages, if there was a particular funeral, etc., that's something that the applicant, through some kind of comms team that they may have, would liaise with the residents of the village. It has happened in the past with other projects that Ayrshire Roads Alliance have been involved in, where there is a community sort of liaison type person that's attached to the contractor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? So I think that's covered B and C. If people are happy to move on to D, which is around the possible measures for inclusion in the construction traffic management plan. So the Carrick applicant, you've included a series of possible measures for inclusion in the TMP, and there's also specific matters set out in the draft conditions that are dated the 7th of April. Now, these lists differ slightly as far as I can see. Is that something that the council and the applicant want to discuss today, or is it something for the conditions hearing? It also relates to Craiginmoddie and Knockcronal, so it may fall better at the conditions hearing, but I'm happy to take views on that, whether you want to look at that just now. Mr. Callan, do you want to comment on that?
I think it would be best to discuss it at the conditions hearing. I think it'll allow us to tidy up some of the miscommunication that we've sent out in the last day or two as well.
Okay, that's fine. Happy with that. Is the applicant happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. So item E is just a query similar to the previous one. It kind of relates to all three proposals. Obviously, we note that there's separate traffic management plans and abnormal load management plans for each proposal. But I just wanted to ask a specific question about pre and post construction condition surveys. So I see in the Carrick's hearing statement, which is CD 1313, paragraph 2.34, you're talking there about condition surveys being carried out in relation to the abnormal load route. But I wondered whether they would also be required in relation to general construction traffic. I think Knockcronal's general construction TMP does include reference to such surveys, but is that something that Carrick and Craiginmoddie would also require? I didn't see that. No, that's okay. We've got the 7th of April version. So yeah, it was a question about pre and post construction condition surveys and whether they should be part of the main CTMP or only the abnormal load one. Perhaps the council should start on that and then the applicants could respond. Mr. Braidwood?
Yes, ma'am. We would be seeking dilapidation surveys pre and post construction. Thank you.
And that's for the general construction TMP, not just the abnormal load.
More so for the heavy stuff, not for the general sort of 3.5 ton vehicles that might be going up and down the road, for the heavy plant and vehicles.
Okay, so there is, I think, reference to that in relation to Knockcronal's general TMP. I don't know whether that's something we can pick up when we get to item 4, unless Knockcronal is around at the moment and wants to comment on that. Mr. Fraser?
Thank you, ma'am. I'm around. I don't know if Mr. Buckingham has anything to say.
It's fine. Maybe put him on the spot. We can pick it up.
I can answer that now if that would
you.
be of assistance. Under the Section 96 agreement, road condition service would be undertaken post and after the completion of construction activities. Although I think we've made a suggestion of having interim surveys as well, but that would be before any construction activities take place, so the fair and accurate record of the road condition can be ascertained before any movements occur. And then obviously damage that could be attributed to construction activities can then be repaired ongoing or at the end of construction activities, but it would apply to construction traffic and to abnormal load traffic as well.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. So if that's the case, if it's to sit in Section 96, is it necessary for that then to be in the condition as well, or could that come out of the condition? Because it does seem to just appear in the Knockcronal one rather than the other two.
I would defer to the planning specialists on that one, ma'am, I'm afraid.
Right, well, we'll leave it.
It's probably better to sit with them.
Yeah, Mr. Callan can pick that up in due course at the conditions hearing on the 20th. It's fine. So item F then is about all of the matters that are listed in paragraph 2.23 of the applicant's statement. So if we look at the wording there, it does appear to differ slightly in terms of the matters covered in the conditions. So again, do people want to leave that until the 20th, or do we want to have a look at that just now in terms of, I think what I could do is just run through it quickly. I think most of those matters are covered. So I think it's just a difference in wording, but most of the matters seem to be covered by the condition on the CTMP. There's 2 further elements included which relate to signing and traffic control measures being undertaken by a QA consultant and on full implementation of the AIL traffic management plan, unless otherwise agreed by the authority. So is the council content actually that we can just say that that's acceptable at this stage? You happy with those additional measures? Yep.
Yeah, we are happy.
Okay, and the applicant, anything to add?
No, ma'am. I think in terms of the bullet list at paragraph 2.23 of CD 13.13, I've cross-checked all these bullet points with condition 17 for the abnormal load plan, and all these bullet points are certainly covered by one of the items in condition 17. I can run through them if you want. But
no, it's fine. I've done that exercise as well, so I just wanted to check that the council was happy with the 2 additional elements that were.
There don't appear to be anything missing from my review.
That's great. Any other comments on that? And moving on to item G, this relates partly to the Dumfries and Galloway area, but I wondered if the applicant was able to clarify what level of assessment has been done in relation to the abnormal load route around and through Gretna Green, and whether ancient woodland would be affected in relation to the route accommodation works coming from the south. And I'll maybe allow the other parties to comment on this, but I just wanted to turn to the applicant first on the assessments that you've done.
Yeah, so in terms of the abnormal load assessment, that has been undertaken from the King George V docks in Glasgow all the way down the M74 onto the M6, where the loads would effectively U-turn at one of the much larger grade separated junctions on the M6. So it would go past the turn off at Gretna for the A75 and continue on south onto the M6, U-turn to come back up the M6 and onto the M74, and then turn left and westwards onto the A75. So there wouldn't be any abnormal load traffic routing through Gretna Green itself.
Okay,
I think it's a consequence of the plan that was included for the abnormal load route only showed effectively from the A75 round Dumfries and then to the south, the site from the south. But the route has been assessed substantially further than that. It's probably just a miscommunication from the plan that has been lodged, because I think primarily because the route from the A75 has been used extensively for other wind farms, and there is mitigation at most of the roundabouts along that route. It's been well established as a delivery route that we didn't include that in the plan effectively.
Okay, that's very helpful clarification. Mr. Ross, did you want to add anything on that?
No, that's fine. It's just, as Mr. Bissett said on the diagrams, it inferred the vehicles turned right from the A74 onto the M74 onto the A75, but if it's going to be a U-turning at a suitable junction, that would cover that point.
Great. And the second point I was asking was just about the effect on any ancient woodland in relation to the abnormal load route coming up through Glentrool. I think that was a concern that had been raised by Save Straighton, and I wondered if you could respond to that.
Yes, we have investigated further as part of the abnormal load assessment. We have looked at the route to determine what the initial impact would be on the road network for the delivery of abnormal loads. We've investigated further in the vicinity of Glentrool, and we believe that there will be no impact on ancient woodland in the vicinity of Glentrool. However, we do acknowledge the potential constraints of ancient woodland nearby on the route, and an arboriculturist, if it were to say, will be deployed when developing any detailed mitigation measures, and this will be in consultation with South Ayrshire Council to ensure that there's no adverse impact on ancient woodland.
Okay, I think it'll be Dumfries and Galloway Council probably as well, given that's outside the area.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Any other questions from others on that? Council want to comment on that at all? No, happy. Mr. Ross, you've got your hand up again.
Thank you. So would sweat path analysis be carried out for that route to identify sections of woodland and walls that would be affected, or has that been carried out?
Yeah, absolutely. There would be full swept path assessments undertaken for the final turbine that's selected and the final blades, etc., for the whole of the abnormal load route from the motorway network to ensure that the appropriate mitigation is developed, delivered, and agreed with the appropriate roads authorities prior to the commencement of any deliveries.
So that would have to be agreed by the roads authority before that route could be used.
Yes, it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to item H, which is the effects on recreational routes and trails. And I wondered if perhaps Saved Straighten or others could begin by flagging up any particular concerns that you have around effects on recreational routes from the Carrick proposals, and obviously we can have a bit of a discussion about that and also about the applicant's proposed enhancements. Obviously we've touched on that in relation to Craiginmoddie, but the sorts of issues that, around maintenance and access, etc. But if we could start with Mr. Ross or others to say a little bit about the effects on recreational routes.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, National Cycle Route 7 runs along the C27 from Floynty to the Bells Monument and then continues south on the C46W to Glentrool. This route is going to be used by HGV Access for 2 of the schemes. So there's concerns there over potential conflict between construction traffic and cyclists using this route. There's also core path SA47 that runs from North Balloch to Straighten, which kind of crosses the application sites. Again, there need to be, measures taken to protect walkers from the interaction with construction traffic at that location. As we previously said, logging lorries do use the C27, but as I said earlier, logging lorries on the road where I am exceed the speed limit through villages. They come around corners on the wrong side of the road. So for cyclists, there needs to be kind of serious protection for, mitigating the impact of potential conflict between them and construction vehicles.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Bissett, have you got any response?
Yeah, I think that there's 2 points to be made there, or 2 avenues to be explored in terms of the recreational routes. The first one is the control of construction activities through the construction traffic management plan. And I think Mr. Devaney's touched on this earlier, and so has Mr. Braidwood. And that's an appropriate mechanism to explore and deal with the construction activities. In terms of the protection of cyclists and walkers that may be using the routes that Mr. Ross has mentioned, these can be suitably addressed through the condition on the access management plan.
Okay. Could you say a little bit, Mr. Bissett, about the proposed enhancements that might come forward in terms of walkways or car parking or that kind of thing?
I don't have the specific detail to hand at the moment in terms of what would be proposed, but certainly that's matters that can be explored in terms of parking for walkers and cyclists that would be using the routes in the area, in addition to the facilities that are already available. There is obviously a requirement for passing places along the route as well, to ensure that there's sort of safe passageway of vehicles in both directions along the construction routes. And then obviously there's the control of the construction activities through the CTMP in terms of speed and driver awareness and safety and everything else that may occur during deliveries.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Traynor?
Can I just add that it might be wise to give consideration to not just walkers and cyclists, but also riders, horse riders. who use these roads frequently, and also the cattle movements that take place on these roads. Cattle get moved across these roads from one field to another on a regular basis. For instance, White Hill cattle, High Moorstone cattle get moved from one side of the U25 to the other twice a day for milking.
Thank you, that's useful. I mean, I think that should certainly be aware of horse riders. I think the British Horse Society probably has commented on the application, if I recall. But those are useful points to raise. Does the council want to say anything in response on matters around recreational access or the access management plan?
Again, that would be for the access officer of the council to respond to, and not the roads authority.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to ask on that. And the final point here again was about section 69, section 96 agreements. And is there anything else that Mr. Braidwood you want to say about that in relation to this proposal or post-construction mitigation works?
No, ma'am.
No, you content. Mr. Bissett, you content.
Yes, it's our view that the section 96 agreement is the most appropriate agreement in this case.
Thank you. Okay, so we're getting on quite well in terms of time, so I think we will push on to item 4 now, if the Knockcronal parties are available. Mr. Fraser, let's see. And Mr. Buchan I see now as well, so it's helpful. Okay, so similar sort of starting point around route choice. Sorry, I'll just ask Ms. Traynor, you've got your hand up. Could I ask you if you've got a question just now?
No, I don't have a question. My apologies, but I'm going to have to leave the meeting if that's all right with you.
That's absolutely fine with me. Thank you very much for participating so far.
Thank you.
And we'll see you another time. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so item 4A on the agenda relates to route choice. And so, as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, the council's confirmed on Friday that the 3-ton limit on the U27 is no longer required. And yesterday we also touched on the access routes in relation to private water supply effects around the property at Glenalla. So I think, Mr. Fraser, at that point you confirmed it was your intention to progress with both access routes at this stage, sorry, is that correct?
That remains correct.
Yeah. You had said in your response to further written submissions, which was some time back, but you'd said at that point that only one route would be progressed and utilised ultimately. So obviously we would have wanted to be in a position to set out the agreed route to ministers. But is there anything you can say about your preference, a preferred route? Would there be a single route chosen ultimately? Would that be the same route for abnormal loads and general construction traffic, or do you intend to use both in some way?
The intention, as I understand it, Buchan will jump with me if I'm. Intention, as I understand, ma'am, is only to use one route, but we consider that we've shown that either route is suitable, and obviously before we were to start work, we would choose which of the two routes we were going to use, and we would then stick to that route. That's my understanding of what we're proposing now.
Okay, thank you. And picking up on a point, I think it was raised by Daly Community Council. Are there any implications for tree felling in terms of the choice of route? Would there be a significant difference in terms of the amount of felling required arising from either of the proposed routes? Are you aware?
You're asking Mr. Buchan to deal.
Sorry, was that directed at me, Mr. Fraser? You went very quiet at the end there. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was passing the ball to you, Mr. Buchan.
My apologies. Apologies, there was a kind of you went very quiet at the end there. I don't believe that there is a significant difference in felling between the U27 and U31 route, ma'am.
And would that be set out somewhere in the environmental report, or
I would
has that been?
Double check in terms of the elements there. I believe it will be in the ES. It may not be in the transport elements of it, but within the wider ecological review elements of it.
Perhaps you could get back to me on that if somebody could check
Certainly,
the reference to where I would find that. That would be helpful. Mr. Fraser?
I was just going to say, I am in the ES, but I'll just checking for the reference now, and hopefully I'll have it for you before we finish on the Cronal.
Okay, that's very helpful. I have to say, Mr. Fraser, your volume isn't very high. I don't know whether that's something that you can turn up a little bit.
I'll do my best. Is that any better?
It's okay. I can hear you, but I would say it's a little bit quieter than the other participants, but we will focus our attention on you when you're talking. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments that any of the other parties wanted to make about the route choice in relation to Knockcronal? Does the council have anything to comment?
No comment.
Okay, thank you. And so item B is looking at, again, proposed measures for inclusion in the construction traffic management plan. So the matters that are set out in that paragraph 4.4.3 of CD 1314, they do differ again slightly from the list in the draft conditions. So again, I presume that will be consolidated, or are there specific items that the council feels need to be added into the TMP that you want to discuss today?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I think it's a discussion for the conditions hearing. I think we'd like to consolidate the conditions regarding the CTMP and looking for a consistent approach across all the three sites.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, there are a few items there that are not included, but that will be picked up, so that's fine. And then again, section 96 agreement, am I right in saying that the council again would promote a section 96 agreement, not a section 69?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Is the applicant content with that?
Yes.
Okay, so there wouldn't be any other measures required in conditions in relation to post-construction mitigation that would be covered by section 96. And item D, we're rattling through these ones a bit more quickly. It relates again to the effects on recreational routes and trails and proposed enhancements. So I just wonder if anyone would like to comment more on those effects, whether Mr. Ross or Daly want to say anything more about that, and whether the council is content about the proposed measures that would address that. And also then if the applicant could say a little bit more after that about the proposed enhancements. So if I could turn first to Mr. Ross or Helena, would you like to say anything about recreational routes?
I just refer to my previous comments regarding Carrick because the impact on the U27 is similar.
The Community Council, any comments?
Yeah, no real comment. It's basically just to bear in mind, you know, to be consistent with all of them, really.
Okay. So could the applicant, sorry, say a little bit about the proposed enhancements and how they might be implemented?
Certainly, ma'am. In terms of enhancement works, there is an access management plan that is being proposed, and I believe the wording for that is agreed between the council and the applicant. I'll let the council confirm or the status on that. In terms of enhancement works, that would relate to provision of information boards located on the site to assist users of the network within the site. Any of the path crossings that are made on recognised paths to some of the wind farm infrastructure going in would be made at grade, so there would be easy access over any crossing points. All access gates that would be installed would be compliant for walkers, for cyclists and equestrians, and installed to the appropriate British standard, which I had written down, ma'am, but I can't find the piece of paper to remind myself, but I can always forward that on if that was of assistance, but it would be
I don't think it's necessary.
The standard to all. And there would be enhanced directional finger signage boards across the site to help people navigate around the area there.
Okay, that's helpful. Does the council want to say anything in response?
Yes, ma'am. Just to confirm that condition 19, which the draft conditions for Fair Access Management Plan, these have been agreed between council and respective applicants, and in respect of Knockcronal in particular, it's quite bespoke. It makes specific reference to Corpat SA 47 as well, and in terms of what needs to be done.
Yeah, that was the one that was cutting across. That's helpful. Okay, any other comments on that item? Okay, well, Knockcronal, we've got through your issues fairly quickly. Mr. Fraser, do you want to say anything before we finish on that?
Yes, ma'am, I promised you I'd come back on the felling, and I
Oh, yes.
I have the reference for you if it helps.
Yes.
Excuse me, ma'am. I'm told that the answers in EIAR Appendix 3.3, which is core document 3.145. Okay. And there are two tables there. One is table 3.3.2, and the other is table 3.3.3. And I'm told that the net effect is that the felling for the north access is 3.65 hectares, and felling for the west access would be 3.46 hectares.
Okay.
I hope my mental maths is still up to it, ma'am. I think that's about a 5% difference.
Well, that's very impressive. Okay, I will have a look at that. That's very helpful. Thanks for those references, Mr. Fraser. So I think that concludes the specific questions we had on Knockcronal. If we could move on to item 5, I think we're still okay on timing wise. We might actually get finished before lunch if we're lucky. So there are a few questions here involving all the parties. So the first one, we touched on it a little bit earlier on, and that's obviously the cumulative effects from the construction traffic, including through Cross Hill. But I think there's also potential around the use of Tormichel Quarry if it does or doesn't get used. So I think if we could perhaps turn to the council first about any concerns that you might have about cumulative effects, and whether there's any controls that we particularly need to look at in that respect. It does also relate a little bit to item C here, which is about phasing of construction. So could I turn to Mr. Braidwood or Mr. Callan on this first?
Thank you, ma'am. In terms of the cumulative effect on the road network, we would have area inspectors that would cover these areas, and they would report any defects directly back into Ayrshire Roads Alliance. And again, I suppose around the effects of the three all working at the same time, then we would be looking for phasing of construction management plans and construction activities throughout the time.
And how do you manage that between the three proposals if they were all to get consent?
Well, then that would be sent in to our offices, and we would have officers allocated against these projects, and the area inspectors would work together as well, because they cut over a couple of inspection areas.
Okay. Do any of the applicants want to say anything about potential cumulative effects or potential phasing?
Well, perhaps if I could start, and I'm sure Dr. Devaney and Mr. Bissett may wish to chime in. In terms of cumulative issues, there are a number of items to consider. It is unlikely that the peak traffic for all three sites will coincide at exactly the same time. And that's partly a function of the construction programme. All three sites have subtly different connection dates for the grid, which is the end date, obviously, for the construction process. In addition, Police Scotland will only transport abnormal indivisible loads for one project only at one time. And with regards to that, those movements cannot coincide at the same time. The police have limited resources, so one project will go, then that will have to be delivered in full, and then the police will move to their next project, be that one of these three or alternative schemes that they are assisting with. There is also elements in terms of the route to market that the developers are seeking. Some of those vary there. And then there's the availability of construction staff and materials as well. So the likelihood of all three coinciding with their peaks coinciding at the same time is greatly reduced. And hopefully that's of some help. But I'll obviously that by my colleagues from the other projects may wish to add to that.
Yeah, I'll hear from the others. Mr. Devaney?
Yeah, I think Mr. Buchan picked up on a number of good points there. I was going to say that, generally the primary access routes to each site are slightly different, and where you might get cumulative impacts might be on the likes of the A77 trunk road, which is designed as a strategic road. It can handle extra traffic. It's designed to take high volumes of HGV traffic. It's likely we're probably going to use different quarries here as well if we need stone. And I think it's important to recognise that all three sites have been based, their assessment has been based on a worst case scenario of stone being imported. But all three sites hope to win stone on site. So we could actually see the cumulative impacts really reducing down here if it comes to bear that we're all able to win stone on site as planned.
Okay.
I think that's probably all I've got to say on cumulative impacts just now. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Bissett, you want to say anything?
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Probably not. I think both my colleagues there have covered all the points. I think the one I was going to make was in terms of the winning of material on site, but Mr. Devaney's already just highlighted that, so I don't think there's anything further to add this time.
Okay, I mean, obviously I understand the position in relation to the abnormal load that can obviously be managed in terms of timescales. I think perhaps the issue is more around construction traffic. I think the concerns that were raised were around, Daly and Cross Hill potentially having crossover by two proposals at a time. But I understand it is difficult to say more because we don't know what the position is going to be about borrow pits at this stage. Mr. Devaney, do you want to say anything more?
There's just maybe one final point there, just in relation to the last point you made there, ma'am, is that market forces tend to come to bear as well in situations like this, that there's only so much capacity available from quarries and, from concrete batching plants and things like that. So, high generating activities such as the concrete being poured on site, it's not going to happen all at the same time because you simply wouldn't be able to source all of that concrete in the same day for the three sites. So I think that gives us some comfort that, we're not going to get an overlap in the highest generating activities on the sites.
Okay. Is the council content with that view as well?
Yes, we are.
Okay, any other comments? Mr. Ross, yeah.
Thank you. So if the three schemes don't run concurrently, it would mean there would be a prolonged overall time period for construction lasting several years, because the current scheme is a programme between 12 and 22 months. So if they ran subsequently, it could be a period of 3-4 years of disruption to local residents in terms of traffic and impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on that?
Ma'am, if I may, what I think the point we're putting together is that the peaks are unlikely to coincide at the same time, but there may be some crossover between the general activity. So it wouldn't be one site complete and then move on to the next one and then on to the next one. There would be some crossover, but I think the point we're trying to make is that the peak of construction, which is what the assessments are based upon, that very high localized peak, are highly unlikely to coincide at the same time. In terms of the actual length of those works, I don't think anyone here could truthfully give an accurate answer to that, because we're not sure in terms of the the appointment of contractors, the commercial elements of it as well. So we're not sure exactly when we can start. But the point we're making is it wouldn't be one project, then another, then another. There would be some mix, but it wouldn't be at the peak periods. I hope that helps clarify.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
But we will still be subject to disruption over a longer period than each single proposal.
Yes,
some overlap.
Yeah, I understand. I understand your point there, Mr. Ross. Thank you. And just to turn to item B, I just wanted to get the applicant's comments on the accuracy of Safe Straight's figures in its statement. So if we look at CD 1721, I think I managed to get the right CD reference there for some reason, but I didn't at the start of the agenda. So I think it's page 7 of your statement, table 1. And I just wanted to get the applicant's views on that. I get this people up myself. So if we could start with Craiginmoddie.
I may be able to come in before the applicant.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Ross, you could introduce the point a little.
Yeah, having had a look at this, on the original submission, the number of turbines for Carrick and Craiginmoddie were incorrect, so I've now amended those. So that might help in terms of the applicant's responses. I've also put together a list of the CD references for the data in that table, so I can supply that to you if required.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you. Could I ask the applicants to comment? Mr. Devaney?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. So we've got this table presented here. I can comment on the Craiginmoddie numbers there. Yep. So we've got total vehicle trips, which is actually our total HGV trips, at 14,402, which is the worst case, assuming that all stone is imported. Construction period of 12 months and 18 turbines. That information seems to be correct. And there's been some analysis done there on number per turbine, number per day, which I wouldn't raise any issue with. Key difference to the other wind farms is that our assessment has been based on HGV trips, and we don't have a number in there for LGV trips, which would be an addition to what's in there.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Mr. Bissett?
Thank you, ma'am. For Carrick Wind Farm, the numbers quoted in CD 1721 are mostly correct. The number of wind farms in the application was 13 and not 17 as stated in the table. I think 17 was probably the original number at scoping discussions. This number of 13 has now been reduced to 12 with the removal of T10, which has happened in the last couple of months. Now, in table 1 of Mr. Ross's submission, the last line, the total vehicle trips per turbine, I think in the table here, if we take the numbers as read, at 3,472, this is not a figure that has been derived by us, the Carrick applicant, and I'm not sure what the the relevance of it is in terms of a comparison between the three developments, but it's not a number that can or should be relied upon for any reason. It seems to be a simplistic arithmetic derivation of the numbers, and undoubtedly they will be different for a variety of reasons, and this could include the length of access track that's required for each turbine and all the turbines cumulatively, and also to do with forestry felling as well. For example, the other point to make on the table is that for Carrick Wind Farm, the numbers of vehicle trips, the HGVs, the cars, and the LGVs, and the total vehicle trips, they are total movements, i.e. that is arrivals and departures, so it's not one-way trips. And the final comment to make on this part of it, and it's not necessarily to do with the table, but figure 4A within CD 1721 is not correct for Carrick Wind Farm. So if we can turn to that for a second, I'd just like to highlight what I believe is the matter here.
So figure 4B.
Figure 4A. A for apple.
Okay.
So in figure 4A, you can see the construction traffic access routings for Carrick are in blue, and the Carrick site is highlighted in blue. There appears to be a route line heading from Cross Hill south, joined with the Craiginmoddie and Knockcronal wind farms, and then accessing into Carrick from its, I would say, northwestern corner. That's certainly not a route that's proposed by the Carrick applicant, and it doesn't feature in any of our documents. So I don't know if it's maybe just a drafting error, but certainly that's not a route that is proposed to be used by the applicant.
Okay, that's helpful clarification. And Mr. Buchan?
I have nothing to add on the figures in the table for our project. I would just note in just underneath the table in the objectors document there on paragraph 49, there's reference to 125,000 additional vehicle trips. That number is incorrect. Cannot find the derivation of that. It's I get it to 99370 movements, not 125,000. And that's the only comment I have to make on the numbers there.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that. Mr. Ross, do you want to say anything else in response?
Yeah, thank you for those comments. With regard the total vehicle movement by turbine, we were just trying to get an indication of, what that figure could be, and we were just kind of surprised by the variation in the total number of vehicle trips per turbine, given there must become some sort of standard approach to, provision and construction of these schemes. So, we were just wanted to get clarity as to how kind of the vehicle trip generations for each scheme have been derived, given there was such kind of discrepancy between total vehicle trips per vehicle, per turbine. Maybe the figure might be figure 4A might be referring to the previous routings on routes 2 and 3, which have subsequently been removed from the Carrick scheme. So maybe that's where those figures, the anomaly has arisen. I think that, and that's, like I say earlier, I can provide you with CD references for those data points, for the data provided in those tables.
Yeah, it would just be helpful to clarify where you got those figures. That would be useful.
Thank you.
Okay, and does the council have anything to comment on that table? Any other? Okay, thank you. So item C, I think we have probably covered this under item A. Is there anything else that the council wants to add about any particular conditions, for example, that might be required around phasing, or are you happy that that would be covered by the individual traffic management plans and your own internal arrangements, Mr. Braidwood?
Yeah, I confirm we're happy with what's proposed.
Great. And item D, so paragraph 174 of Carrick's traffic and transport chapter of the EIA, so that's CD 213, that discusses cumulative effects arising from 5 developments that are set out in that paragraph, the paragraph previous, paragraph 173, and that being Carrick, Clochray, Arcleach, Kilgalech and Craiginmoddie. But it does raise the suggestion there of an overarching traffic management and monitoring plan and a phased delivery plan. So could Carrick say a little bit more about what was envisaged there? And maybe ask the council about that as well. But is there some sort of overarching mechanism that could be brought forward or not? So could Carrick say a little on that first?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. In terms of an overarching traffic management and monitoring plan, this is a matter that can be discussed with the other applicants and the council for the preparation of the construction traffic management plans. In terms of, I suppose, close liaison between all the parties, should they all be consented, to ensure that we're minimising impact on the road network. In terms of the overlap in activity, there's likely to be very little overlap in activity. We've touched on this matter already. Due to the differing timescales and the proposed construction routes, we don't believe that there's a significant overlap there. In terms of the, I think you made a second point there, but I didn't note it down, ma'am. I wonder if you could possibly refresh my memory.
I think I was going to ask the council about this as well. It's more. Sorry, I'm hearing my voice twice. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I understand the sort of phasing points that you were making earlier. It was just whether there was any specific sort of mechanism that we needed to say included in a condition, or it sounds like it's something that would be a sort of voluntary thing between the applicants and the council, should it be needed. Would that be a fair summary? And would carry on, and then I'll ask the council for their opinion.
I think that is a fair summary. It's just actually occurred to me what your second point was. Okay. It was in terms of the abnormal load deliveries, and Mr. Buchan had touched on this already. There won't be abnormal load deliveries for all 3 sites at the same time. That just doesn't happen with Police Scotland. It'll be one at a time, effectively. So I think that was the second point that you were asking on. So in terms of a coordination there, it's quite easy for us to say. I think that the other applicants can confirm this, that there won't be an overlap in AIL deliveries.
Mr. Callan or Mr. Braidwood, do you want to say anything else on that sort of overarching plan?
I think it might be a difficult thing to achieve, given we're dealing with individual proposals. We're fully aware that there will be crossover and maybe staggering in terms of their deliveries, but that does raise a cumulative impact. But I think it's difficult to condition something covering these 3 proposals, but also obviously there's been mention made of further 2 Section 36 applications as well.
Okay. Any other comments on that? Okay. Right, that takes us to the end of the questions that we had. I'm just going to check whether my colleagues, Mr. Bray or Mr. Reid, have any other comments, questions that they wanted to make. Mr. Bray, have your hand up?
Thank you, Ms. Leland. It's probably flag more than anything else, but because I don't think the matter is covered in the conditions so far, is really in the conditions sessions to investigate the potential of conditions which can manage the sourcing of aggregate on site. Given the issues that have been presented and discussed today, we may want to ask whether or not planning conditions can try and ensure that aggregate is won from the site and only brought in where essential, and some sort of mechanism to try and manage that, because I don't think that at the moment, in terms of, I think the condition is it 13 and 18, just really deal with the practicalities of it. But given some of the material, no pun intended, in the EIR, there seems to be environmental benefits for winning within the sites. So Australian flag, I think, will be wanting to discuss how best to manage that in this particular circumstance, given the cumulative impacts and the issues raised. I just want to flag it up, and I don't know if any of the applicants or the council want to respond just now or just take note.
Thank you. It's certainly something that we can discuss on the 20th of June, if that gives people a little bit more time to think. But if anyone's got a response they want to make just now. No.
Not really, no. I think we'll discuss that on the 20th. I'm very conscious that there's been a very long list of things which have been surreptitiously moved to be discussed on the 20th. It feels like there's a lot of material to cover them, but we'll give thought to the wording or suitable wording to secure that objective.
Thank you. I mean, I hope that a number of matters will be resolved in advance. It sounded like we were going to get another set of conditions this week, hopefully, that will hopefully move us forward on a number of areas. So that's
yes.
Mr. Reid, you've got your hand up too.
Yeah, I think you've just touched on what I was going to refer to. We did write out to parties last week looking for an update on progress on conditions, and it's just a reminder that we're looking for a response on that by Wednesday of next week, the 14th of June. And I think, as has already been said, given that there seems to be progress being made, I think it would be useful if all parties could get an up-to-date list of the position on conditions in advance, obviously, of the 20th, rather than anything kind of appearing either the day before or on the day. So I think if we can get what the latest position is, I appreciate that it might still be a moving feast, but if we can get a response by next Wednesday, the 14th, of the most up-to-date position, then that will allow us to see what needs to be focused on and any other matters following today and maybe yesterday, any others that need to be considered as well. So hopefully that can be achieved by next week.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. That's helpful. So I think that really draws us to a close. The couple of points just to pick up were that obviously we will get that consolidated list, hopefully. It sounds like there's a bit of tidying up to do on that. There was the question around the restoration of the EIL route for Craiginmoddie. That was something that we hadn't really heard about before, and would like to know a bit more about that and whether that's going to be tied into a condition. And I think, Mr. Ross, you were going to give us those updated references in relation to that last point we were discussing. So I think those are the only follow-ups that I've taken from it.
I think there was also, yes, there was also the question about potential removal of the link between turbines 2 and 3.
Yes.
On Craiginmoddie. So
yes,
that's
on my list.
Yeah, we'll come back on that. It's very likely to be a suggested deletion, which we'll pick up again by suggested condition. Right. So that needs to go on the list.
It's on the list. That's helpful. Thank you.
And there is just one matter. I don't want to cut across this. Nothing to do with this. Should we just, if you...
Please go ahead.
It's about aviation. Nothing to do with this. You have been sent some correspondence this morning. We're struggling in relation to dates, and so it's looking at late August. I just want to put that up, the priority in the matters you need to deal with.
Yeah, we'll look at that this afternoon now that we've
Thank
got a
you.
bit more time to do so. So that's helpful. So if nobody else has got any other points to raise, I'll just say thank you very much to you all for participating today. It's been very helpful just to clarify a number of issues for us. And the next session is a hearing tomorrow on peat matters, just in relation to the Carrick proposal. So we'll see a few of you at that tomorrow, and that's a virtual session starting at 9:30. And for others, we expect to see a number of you on Monday morning. So we have the residential visual amenity site visits starting then. For those of you who are meeting in Strayton, we will see you at the Kirkmichael car park at 9 o'clock, and we will see any residents as we proceed along the agreed route. We will try our best to keep to the circulated timetable, but it will be tight. So as I say, we'll try our best. And for those that are travelling around the area, it will be quite a long day. So please remember to bring your lunch and some refreshments, maybe some sun cream if we're lucky. So thank you very much for your time today, and we'll see a few of you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.